And on my way to the intensive care unit, they were getting ready to put a trach in me, and I had started breathing on my own. And they had done tests and found out that it wasn't a heart attack, it just was chemotherapy again. They had found in my lymph node about a walnut-sized tumor that had metastasized under my left armpit. And the doctor said that we can try chemotherapy directly into the lymph node. It's a new treatment that they had out, and she wanted to try it. And I said, well, if it's not anything like the others where it's just an injection, it's not IV, which the others were IV. So I agreed to let her try this, and the only thing it did was hurt. It felt like they put a 2x4 under my arm, and it hurt for a good long time, but it didn't do anything, it didn't shrink. During all this, I was in the middle of having to put my grandmother in hospice because she was pretty close to dying herself. And I had someone that told me, you need to get out of that situation and get into a better environment for you and take care of yourself and just worry about you for a little while instead of others. And although that was a little hard for me to sink in, I agreed. At that point, I had decided that, you know, the chemotherapy was going to kill me before the cancer did, so I decided that this wasn't going to be an option for me anymore. I started the Beck protocol, the blood electrification, and the colloidal silver, and magnetic pulsar. About 2 weeks later, I left Florida to come to California by car, and that took almost 2 weeks. And by the time we got to California, the walnut-sized tumor in my armpit was already gone. It had shrunk and was no longer even, you couldn't even feel it. Now, to this day, I do the herbs and I do the blood electrification, and almost on a daily basis. I mean, there are people that would say it's not needed every day, but hey, I should be dead by all medical standards. And if it's going to help me to stay alive, it's not going to bother me to wear a little thing on my arm for a couple hours. I've had arthritis since I was in high school, osteoarthritis, which is very unusual, but somehow, lucky me, I got it. And very hard to even climb the steps in the front. I had a hard time, took me a little while to get up the steps. I thought I would use this magnetic pulsar on my knees for a little while and see if it, you know, did anything, just out of the blue. And within a couple of days, the noise, I had literal noise in my knees from the arthritis, and that had totally stopped. And the pain is, I haven't had it since. Also, I had a very bad case of arrhythmia. I would skip a beat, my heart would skip beats, and then it would speed up, and I've had this for quite a while. And I don't have that anymore either. Since I use the magnetic pulsar practically everywhere on my body.
Chronic fatigue is, well, probably the best way. Someone once described to me how somebody described it to them, and it was basically someone hooking up a suction to you and sucking up your life force. I had to quit my job totally because I couldn't function. I did have some practitioners that basically gave me the feeling that it was all in my head. And that's really hard to take. I remember when I got a hair analysis done from one company after I was into it a few years, and they came back and said that, you know, your levels are so low that, you know, you shouldn't be having any energy. And in fact, when they got my test, they redid it when they get such low report. And I just broke down and cried, because that was the first confirmation of anybody saying, hey, something's wrong here. With the practitioners, I found that I really had a good rapport with, I felt like I was friends with. I started going on colon cleanses and liver cleanses and kidney cleanses and parasite cleanses and juicing and fasting, and totally changed my lifestyle. And once I did that, I was able to work 3 days a week. So I was able to function with chronic fatigue, but nothing still had kicked it out. Someone loaned us an audio tape lecture of Bob Beck speaking. And it was right away we knew we really wanted to look into this. And how life works. Through a newspaper we found out that he was going to be speaking 2.5 hours from us in a couple months. And my husband, who knows electronics, he built me some of the units. So I went on the units. I went on the blood electrification and the magnetic pulsar, which is for the lymph system. And when I went on it, it just totally knocked me out. I had to sleep, for long periods of time during the day. I ended up having to do three-week sessions for myself. And then after that, I didn't consider myself as a person having chronic fatigue anymore. And I haven't since. I went for a period of working, probably with the business. We worked 10 to 12 hours a day, almost 7 days a week. And our diet sort of fell by the wayside for about 7 months. And I did notice my energy started going back down, so I got on the units right away. We changed our diet right away, and I really don't have chronic fatigue anymore.
They found a very large tumor, and it had to be excised. They did a hysterectomy. They did a colostomy. They just about removed everything inside of me, but not everything, because the radiologist's reports say that analyses show that there were still some metastasizing inside. I was discharged from the hospital and instructed to report for radiation and for chemotherapy. I declined both. And I'll tell you about my interview with the chief surgeon. I've never seen anybody who belonged more naturally in the Spanish Inquisition. He described with relish, if you can imagine this, the terrible end that would befall me if I didn't go along and undergo the radiation and chemotherapy. And I pointed out that I was exercising the patient's Bill of Rights, the patient's natural permission to decline or accept therapies that were offered. I've never seen anybody so close to an apoplectic fit. His face was the color of cerise, and his blue eyes were flashing with rage. How come that I had, the temerity to refuse radiation and chemotherapy, the things he believed in, and which I didn't? I just knew that that was not the way to go. Somehow it was just a conviction. And I went into the Bob Beck regimen full bore and came out of it smelling apparently like a rose. And I asked him a simple question. I said, look, okay, we'll leave, but would you mind tracking the cancer marker, CA-125? It's for the cancer I have, the ovarian cancer. I will have nothing to do with anybody who uses alternative methods. And he stormed out of the place. So when I was relating to my internist this little event, this episode, he said, well, heck, I'll take those measurements for you, and I've been having those blood tests since then. Well, the first reading was 8 for the CA-125, which is the cancer marker for ovarian cancer. I said, that's fine. The next one was 10. And I said, but it doesn't tell me very much unless I can find out what it was in the hospital. We looked it up. It had been 102 in the hospital. I understand that 34 is the cutoff point. 0 to 34 and you're free, or at least not in danger. Above 35, you are. And some people have very high readings. There is another cancer reading called 19-9, but they're not certain exactly how it should be used for diagnosis. And my readings on that, as you can tell from the records that I've given you, have dropped gradually and are continuing to drop.
A little boy that was 18 months old that had leukemia, and mother came in. He had been through rounds of chemotherapy, and every 3 months he would have a spinal tap and more chemotherapy. And this little boy was a trooper. And Mom just got fed up with the whole process of the regular medical care and chemo. So she came to me and I said, well, let's put him on a really good program. We taught them how to change their diet. And as a little boy, we